Hello, everybody. My name is John Edwards. I'm the Trade Commissioner for China and Hong Kong, and it's a great honour to be joining you here today. I thought I'd start off with showing just a couple of slides that explain the China story and the UK-China economic relationship as it currently is. So this is the first of the slides I wanted to show. This is UK-China trade statistics. And what you'll see on the left-hand graph is a look at our current exports into China. Now, this is based on ONS data, and it takes out two very volatile headings. It takes out fuels, which is mostly crude oil price. It takes out non-monetary gold, which is GDP neutral. And what you will see from that, therefore, is that in the first half of 2020, UK exports to China actually grew by around 10%, against a global fall in UK exports of around 15%. And the graph on the right will show, and this is based on Chinese Ministry of Commerce data, that the UK is actually outperforming the majority of its competitors this year in terms of exports to China. Indeed, only the United Kingdom and Japan are seeing an increase in their exports, again, missing fuels and non-monetary gold to China. And this is the second graph that I wanted to show, and this is more of a macroeconomic graph. The one on the left will show to you the countries that have just signed the RCEP, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, that you will have heard about. It's a wide but not very deep trade agreement between the partners, ASEAN and its partners in the region. The yellow bars at the bottom are China, and you will be able to see, therefore, why China was such an important part of that agreement. If you look over onto the graph at the right again, which is projections for PPP from size of the economy from the IMF, that big yellow block at the top is China again. And you'll see, therefore, that the great majority of economic growth over the next 10 to 15 years, or the next 5 years in this graph, in the Indo-Pacific region will be coming out of China. Of course, those are very kind of macro indicators. If you were to look a little bit, dive a little bit more into the sectors and what's happening actually on the ground in China, I think from our perspective, we see three big trends that are driving different sectoral priorities for the Chinese government, the Chinese consumer, and the Chinese economy. So the first of these, and you may have seen it in the news, was the announcement that the president of China made at the United Nations that China would peak its emissions by 2030. That's actually a restatement of a commitment they made in 2015. More importantly, that China will attempt to reach carbon neutrality or net zero by 2060. Now, the latter of those two targets is immensely ambitious and has sent a shockwave throughout the whole of the Chinese economy. And you are seeing a real transition now to green technologies, energy efficiency, electrical vehicles, etc. The second big area is what is called dual circulation theory. Now, that's probably something that people will be less familiar with. It's an economic theory of the Chinese government, but essentially it is all about security of supply chains for some of China's key manufactured goods, and including semiconductors, etc. And what I think you'll be seeing there is a drive to bring in more advanced manufacturing and advanced engineering into China. And then finally, what we would call rebalancing. Now, this has been a priority for the Chinese government for a long period of time. It's to rebalance the economy away from capital-heavy investment and towards consumption. It's an ongoing attempt, and it's an ongoing challenge and struggle, if we're frank. But what I think that means, again, from our perspective, is we are continuing to see increased demand for retail, high-level luxury food and drink, high-end healthcare, high-end education. So those are three of the big mega trends. What does that mean for UKEF? Well, if we're going to be honest, we here in the China Network are at the start of a journey for UKEF. We haven't traditionally done a lot of work for UKEF. But this year or last year, we for the first time set ourselves a target, or UKEF set the target of us dispersing 4 billion in export financing in the China market. And for the first time also, we now have a dedicated resource, my colleague Jiang, who will be speaking to you in a second in more detail about the work of UKEF here in China. And she's already hit the ground running throughout the COVID period, scoping out new opportunities in different sectors. Jiang will speak a lot more in detail about that, but there are broadly three areas that we are looking at. The first of those will be third country collaboration. China is already building a number of infrastructure projects in third countries, as you'll know very well. That will continue, and we're looking for ways to bring more of the UK supply chain into those third country projects. The second area is the area around renewables, particularly perhaps offshore wind, given the strengths that the UK has in that area. It's a complex market, and Jiang will be able to talk to you a little bit about that complexity in her presentation. But again, we're looking for supply chain companies in offshore wind to enter into this China market and other renewables in select projects. And then the third area is some of the larger capital goods, whether it's large medical devices, aerospace, marine, etc. On top of that, of course, in the other areas supporting our exporters back in the UK, the DIT role here is for the UKEF team to work very closely with our sector teams in areas like retail and food and drink to identify some of those big orders and then see how we can support back at the London end the exporters to fulfill those orders. That brings me, I guess, to the end of how we can work together. Now, obviously, we're here to answer any questions that you have, particularly Jiang is the expert, but get in touch with any of our sector teams as well, if that is helpful. And what we are hoping or hope to get from this interaction and this conference is more support, more help in identifying that supply chain. We believe that we can find the opportunities for British business, British exporters in the China market. We've now got the money, the financing from UKEF, and what we really need to do is work together to ensure that we can meet that demand and make the most of that opportunity of the export financing. So thank you very much indeed.
Good afternoon. My name is Jiang Wu. I joined the UKEF as the first representative in China 4.5 months ago. I have been started to scout the market and understand about the Chinese market since joining. Before I joined the UKEF, I had over 20 years experience with a couple of major multinational companies in the industrial sector. And I bring in such experience in helping UKEF in identifying opportunities in China. And I will start sharing some of the thoughts with a couple of slides so that you can see it more clearly. And so before I start talking about the opportunities, let me mention a couple of drivers and challenges in the Chinese market. And as China it has the second largest population in the world with continuously growing economy, as John Edwards just pointed out that during this COVID-19 period, China is the very few countries that still sustains the positive growth in the past year. And the UK exports to China as the second, experienced over 9% of the growth for the first half of the year as compared to other countries. China continues to surprise the world with continuous growth. And secondly, China's urbanization is still continuing as well, as the cities are growing bigger and the more people coming into the cities, and this presents also another huge opportunities for growth and development. And thirdly, China has been seeing more and more growth in the middle class as the lives of the people continues to improve. This provides very high demand for quality food and drink and healthcare sectors. And people are no longer satisfied with the basic needs. and especially the Chinese societies are facing quite a severe food and drink security concerns. So the demand for the foreign-made high-quality food and drink is getting higher and higher. And lastly, most recently, the President Xi Jinping announced to the world, surprisingly, to commit to a carbon neutrality by 2060. This will absolutely present more and more opportunities for international players in the Chinese market for the renewable sectors. A lot of people suspect that the plan becomes sounds a little bit more challenging. Still, we are going to see some happenings in this market as well. Despite of the fact that it's the general knowledge of people that China presents a huge market, it doesn't come without challenges. And for example, the country is a very low-cost driven country with a very high price sensitivity for many sectors. Of course, people are willing to pay for premium price for the imported quality food and drink, as I mentioned about the growth of the middle class. In the industrial sectors, people are very price sensitive about the foreign contents, especially for the UK products. It comes as the image of high quality and then comes with a very high price. And lastly, due to the great development in this country, China has developed a very complete supply chain in the industrial sectors and including infrastructure and the renewable energies. And China becomes the global leader in many of the sectors, especially in the industrial and the consumables sectors as well. This makes the import of foreign products more challenging, and this presents some difficulties for the UK suppliers, especially for the renewables such as solar PV. And China dominates the market with over 70% of the solar panels, and it's very difficult to find enough contents for the UK content to satisfy the UKEF requirement. And again, I would like to touch upon our products a little bit. As everyone may be aware that UKEF supports all sectors, and we essentially provide products for the exporters and the buyers to support the UK export to the rest of the world. Due to the fact that I'm sitting in China, my focus of work mainly is on providing long-term financial support to the Chinese buyers so that they are able to buy more UK exports. Therefore, today, I will only focus on my opportunities suitable for the overseas, the Chinese buyers, so that the UK exporters will have a bigger opportunity to come into this market. So with some basic research and my personal background, and also the scouting of the market in the past 4 months, I pretty much identify some major opportunities in China in 3 major aspects. One is the third country collaboration with major Chinese developers. And second is selective renewable projects in China, including offshore wind and energy storage. And thirdly, the large capital goods such as aircrafts, marine, and large medical devices. And I will elaborate on each of the opportunities later. So for the third country collaboration, China wins over 25% of the international energy and infrastructure contract revenues, among which 60% coming from Africa. So with this huge development around the world, it will be very good for the UK suppliers to partner with the Chinese developers worldwide with three major drivers. And from the picture at the bottom, you can see that there are strong complementarity between the UK and the Chinese companies. The UK companies are strong at the upfront professional services and O&M, and this is a very good fit with the Chinese construction capability. And in certain areas, for example, in offshore wind, the UK suppliers could still some products to complement to the Chinese demand. And of course, the Chinese players are dominant in the construction space. And secondly, despite of the fact that the Chinese developers are taking the leading position worldwide in terms of the international project development, over the years, they are also reaching some challenges in terms of the reputation. So the third country customers like the combination of the cost-effective Chinese construction muscle with the high-quality UK management and service image. The combination of the two will largely improve the acceptance of the Chinese EPC contractor and the UK supplements. And Egypt is a very good example of that. And lastly, there are very strong financial drivers for the Chinese banks and the state-owned companies to start to increasingly use the international banks and international export credit agencies like UKEF, because they are under the pressure to diversify their capital sources, to improve the bankability, and share risks with the international banks. This pressure actually comes from the government. And renewables in China. And China will soon surpass the UK to become the largest offshore wind country in the world with a very ambitious plan, especially after President Xi announced the 2060 ambitious carbon neutral plan. So China currently, the offshore wind installation is about 8 gigawatts, and it plans to build up to 40 gigawatts by 2028, while the UK by 2030 will have 30 gigawatts of offshore wind installation. The UK has accumulated good experience and expertise in offshore wind from the past 10 years. Therefore, the UK is a very strong supply to the Chinese growing market in offshore wind. And also it's now starting to lead on the application of the energy storage, which will be another area for the Chinese players to adopt. However, while the UK suppliers may have some potentials in the offshore wind market and the energy storage, it may not have opened the market for international banks and the export credit agencies in China due to the current electricity mechanism. We are trying to, we are waiting to see the reform of the electricity market so that one day the international banks and UKEF are ready to enter. And it doesn't mean that we stop our effort in developing the renewable energy outside of China. And in 2018, we made the first investment in Taiwan, the Formosa 2 offshore wind, whereby the UK supplied some wind turbine foundations, auxiliary facilities. UKEF provided about 230 million pounds of support, buyer's credit support in the new Taiwanese dollars. And this is really the breakthrough and the showcase of the commitment of the UKEF in Asia and in the rest of the world. And for the large capital goods, I mentioned that there will be some opportunities in aircrafts and marine. I also see some emerging opportunity in medical device. As China is the second largest medical device market with an annual growth rate of 20%, this triples the world's growth level. And also, as China is also improving its living standard, the demand for the mid to high-end devices are becoming higher and higher, and with largely imports from outside world. And Europe, EU accounts for 37% of the such import. So we are working with the DIT colleagues now to identify potential opportunities to create more UK export to the Chinese market in this sector. And right now, the healthcare accounts for only 6.6% of the Chinese GDP, while the OECD countries is 10%. And Chinese government's commitment is to catch up with the developed world's standard. Therefore, the room for the medical device is huge. So with all these identified opportunities, and also with the presence of UKEF in China from now on, I believe that together with DIT colleagues, we will build a stronger marketplace for the UK exporters in the years to come. Thank you very much, and I will welcome any questions you have.